I just started doing live.
Yeah,
I never go on live.
I know. You be dropping a lot of gems. I tweeted what you said about Ben Simmons last night.
I saw that, and a bunch of people picked it up.
Yeah.
So I was just like, with Ben Simmons, I was just like, that kid. I mean, if I would have had a straight and narrow path, or a more straighter and narrower path, I think I would have been able to like make those arguments. But with that being said, I got a couple good years. I had a couple good years. That's it. You know what I mean? It ain't like I had a bunch of good years, but I was balling. I was still balling.
You were balling. I think you played at a very interesting time, Metta, and I feel like when you played for the Pacers, I feel like pre-brawl, I feel like you and Kenyon Martin were villainized. I remember going to this one game when you were on the Pacers and you played against the Nets, and I think you tossed the ball at the ref, and it hit the ref in the back by accident, and it wasn't even on purpose. And I remember he teed you up. I feel like they were looking for Do you remember that?
I remember getting teed up a lot. I remember that. I remember that possession, definitely.
And I just feel like back then, it was like you were hungry, but your hunger got misinterpreted as asshole.
Yeah. I was an asshole. I was actually I was an asshole to like maybe a lot of my teammates actually. Just from like, because when you're playing, sometimes you think it's all about you. It happened before. It happened. I even see it happening now. I be seeing guys do stuff, and I be like, yeah, he think it's all about him. You know what I mean?
But I feel like, for me, I didn't play, but I feel like, I remember Anthony Mason told me one time, he was like the God bless the dead, Anthony Mason. I remember
Anthony Mason.
Queens native. He told me one time, the first contract is about you. You supposed to be, it's all about you. He said the second contract is about everybody else. Your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, the guy who let you look on his paper in math class and history class. You take care of all those little things. And he said, if you're lucky to get the next contract, that's about legacy. And I feel like when you talk about the players who, it's all about you. I mean, I feel like after year 4, year 5, if that's still a thing, then yeah. I feel like year 1, year 2, you still figuring it out. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a fair assessment. I think because you're on a team, but everybody make it to the NBA because they want that fat check at the end of the day. So essentially, it's like you playing individual, but you playing for yourself. And sometimes that can get in the way. But I think with the coaches and the organization, they do a good job of keeping it together because if you're on the team, you're on that team for a reason. If you're the star player, then you're the star player for a reason. You know what I'm saying? If you are, a fourth option player, then you're the fourth option, and you got to figure it out. But sometimes, you can get beside yourself.
You can get beside yourself, and I think that it's just interesting. But I also think your era in the '90s is different than today's player, because I feel like today's player, a lot of them been that. Y'all were that dude, but they were that, like Zion was that dude. He had 100,000 followers on Instagram before he played the NBA game. Like,
yeah,
like that's the graduated version of LeBron being in Slam and LeBron's high school games being on TV.
Yeah, definitely. It's very similar to I think with us it was more like daily news. You know what I'm saying? Like the daily news, like made the daily news. That was like Baller's Life.
Yes. Yes. Or the chat rooms. I feel like you're not that much older than me, but like those chat rooms where you're talking about this high school player or that high school player. I feel like when you were at St. John's, that was like right on the cusp of that. But like high school players, like Gatorade Player of the Year, like when you was or if you was in Sports Illustrated and you was mentioned, like that was like the equivalent of an Instagram post.
That was the Instagram post, big, yeah. And everybody knew.
Yep.
Or getting all the time Kowski talking about you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Weren't you at St. John's when Mike Jarvis was there?
Yep, I played for Mike Jarvis 1 year.
Did y'all used to call him Uncle Phil?
No, I didn't call him Uncle Phil. I didn't.
He looked like Uncle Phil to me.
Mike Jarvis is a typical like black sitcom dad.
Yes.
Right? Definitely. Yep. His wife is great. His wife used to, when I got sick one time with the flu, his wife made chicken noodle soup and brought it to the dorms.
Word?
Big pot of chicken noodle soup, yeah. He's real like family oriented, definitely.
Man, that St. John's team, I remember watching y'all in the tournament. It was Eric Barkley, you, and I feel like that year was special. Like you capitalized off of that and you went to the draft like at the right time. And I feel like when you played, like that, like Coming to America is coming out, and it's crazy because that scene with St. John's when it was at the Garden. I feel like you were like the last player. Like you saw Chris Mullin do it, you saw Mark Jackson do it, you saw Jason Williams do it. But like if you was in New York, you played for St. John's. You don't see that anymore.
Yeah. Harkless did it.
Yeah, but you're right. But I feel like it was different.
Right. I mean, you're talking about the play of the year, high level.
Yeah, like somebody who went to St. John's could have easily went to North Carolina or Duke too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if, me personally, I don't know if Mo was good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like it's the same.
I know what you mean. Like Felipe Lopez stayed at St. John's.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Eric Barkley stayed at St. John's. That's what we was trying to build. We was trying to get that, but then a lot of people, they want to say. I was hoping like Elton Brand would have stayed, like Lamar Odom, but that's how it was supposed to be. That would have been Elton Brand's team. Yeah. But what's best for him?
You brought up Elton Brand.
Yeah.
That team for Riverside Church, AAU, for those paying attention, Riverside Church was like, I saw a picture with you, Elton, Stephon. Was it Stephon in the picture and Lamar, or was it Lamar?
Oh no, it was me, Lamar Odom, Elton Brand, Eric Barkley, Reggie Jesse, Sharif Towns, Sharif Fordham, another great player, and Anthony Glover, another. That team was unbelievable.
That was at the Gauchos gym.
That game was away. That game might have been in Arizona. I remember that picture. I mean, it was like, yeah, that team was like unbelievable. That was like a pro team, and a bunch of other players that everybody went D1.
I was talking to John Celestin, like back in the spring, like when we was all in the house, and he was telling me just like what that AAU scene was like back then. Like he would tell me about playing against Kobe, playing against Elton Brand, playing against like all those different guys, and it's crazy. Like y'all knew who you were before you like were in. How did you, in a pre-internet era, how did y'all know who each other was? Was it just from traveling? Like,
yeah, it was just from like, honestly, you get those reports. So you get the what was the big report back in the days? The that rated everybody. It was called the Scoop. No, what was it called? The basketball. Man, I forget the name of it, but you'll see like every month it's coming out. And I remember like junior year or even sophomore year, I was number like 150 or 200. Yeah, every year I get. Somebody said Street and Smith.
Yes, it was Street and Smith. Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Street and Smith. That's how you just do it. Like I saw Tracy McGrady there. I'm like, all right, I'm a 9th grader. Tracy number 1, Shake Cotton number 1, and you see it, and every year you're like, creeping up. I mean, that was the only way. I never played against T-Mac ever in high school.
You didn't?
Nope, not once. We was the same. We was the same age.
That's crazy. And I think what makes it crazy is when you sit and think about like the high school guys. Like you played 1 year college, but then Tracy went straight to the league. You forget sometimes how old somebody is. Like you look at LeBron and Jared Dudley are the same age.
Yeah.
But because you saw him at Boston College, you don't think LeBron had a 4-year leg up.
Yeah.
So when you talk about Tracy, I didn't even realize that y'all were the same age.
Same age. Tracy, same. Like Tracy wasn't even in the McDonald All-American game. People forget about that. Tracy and Shea Cotton. Man, it's crazy. Like those two was not in the McDonald All-American game.
But you know what helped Tracy?
What you think?
When they almost traded him for Scottie Pippen.
What you mean?
Tracy McGrady, there was talk that Toronto, or when in the draft, that there would be a potential draft day deal to send McGrady to the Chicago Bulls in exchange for Scottie Pippen. Because if you remember, Scottie was disgruntled with that whole, remember on The Last Dance, he was mad about what he was making. He was pissed. They were talking about trading Tracy McGrady for for Scottie Pippen.
As a rookie?
Yes.
Wow, that would have been crazy.
And if you think about it, you didn't really see Tracy McGrady. I mean, you played, so I'll defer to you always, but I feel like when you look at the history books or you look at the way that he was covered, they always say, well, Tracy played next to Vince, so you didn't really get the full extent of how he was in Toronto. It wasn't until he got to Orlando and Grant Hill got hurt that he went off. But in that playoff series against the Knicks, that's when he really showed out.
It's true because I was always putting him second to Vince. Because even when I was playing against Toronto, and I was like on the Bulls, we wasn't that great, but I was starting. But it was still all about Vince.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Tracy wasn't even starting. I think Rashawn Leonard was starting.
Yes.
Nice. Rashawn Leonard was nice. He had that little fade in the post, jab.
That's a name that I have not heard in years.
Yeah, I remember him because it was always tough guarding him. I remember he get that jab, fade, jab, one dribble fade. Hell
mm-hmm. Yeah, that era of basketball, like that quick late 90s and then that transition to 2000s, and I feel like that was AI's time, and that was Shaq and Kobe's window, because it was right after the lockout and it was right after Jordan retired the second time.
Yeah, the second time, yeah. It was just a hell of a time. Jordan retired, he came back, retired the first time, then retired after the Bulls, then came back right to the Wizards. Came back killing.
And then that was that in between when you was in Chicago, and then he was trying to come back and you cracked his ribs. We ain't gonna talk about that. That's a death.
I ain't even. Sam Smith actually released that story.
Yo, it's crazy. I met Sam Smith, like, I'm in and out of Chicago for the glasses company Zenni. Like, they're the Bulls sponsor. Yeah. Like, I've been in and out of Chicago a lot over the last couple of years, and I met Sam, and he's cool. But then I see Last Dance, and then everybody talking about how Sam Smith be getting it.
Like what?
Like he wrote the Jordan Rules book, so I feel like that's what put him on the map to people. But then I'm here ever since Last Dance. I just be hearing about how players say Sam Smith dimed them out.
Well, with me and Sam, I mean, I didn't really think nothing of it, but the story came out. This is when I first got introduced to media and being upset about people saying stuff that's not. So the story came out that, Ron Artest, punched Jordan. And I'm like, yo, what's happening? And it came out his story. I'm like, yo, what's going on here? Like, who told you this? Why you didn't call me? You know what I mean? That didn't happen. So I was like, at that point, I was like kind of off the media and started. Well, I was always like off media anyway, even when I was in like high school, just from being from New York City. For my 5%ers.
Yeah, you had all them Hotep guys. Don't trust the media.
Yeah, he was always like, yeah.
Metta, tell me something. Why is it like when you first went to the Bulls and you was making like a lot of money? You worked at. We talked about this on my podcast, but like you worked at an electronics store, and that was your part-time job. But then you worked for the Bulls. When you first started making a lot of money, did you ever have like hood guilt? Like, I'm making all this money. How am I going to be perceived? And I shouldn't have, like, did you feel guilt that you were making so much money and your life changed like that?
I worked at Circuit City because, like, honestly, I just wanted to be regular. I was like, you know what I mean? I'm regular, but then people think I'm not, but I'm really so regular. But sometimes when people normally make it, you don't normally go back to the hood, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, by yourself or just there. That's not that normal.
Mm-mm.
But for me, I'm like, this is how it has to be. Like, I need to always stay grounded. I need to always stay, you know, at the street level. I think it was the wrong approach, but personally, I just always felt like I overdid it. You know, it's a way to stay at that level without like overdoing it.
I think you're right, and I think some have done it.
Jack Thriller said he ain't going back.
Jack know what time it is. What's up, Jack?
Jack Thriller. I love Jack, man.
He keep it a buck. That's my man. That's my man. I think there's an art to still remaining. In politics, they use the word bipartisan. I feel like it's an art to be able to stay even keeled in that situation. Everybody can't do it.
Yeah, sometimes you try so hard to be even keeled instead of just letting it happen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, let it happen naturally, kind of observe and embrace the moment, sort of thing. Embrace the moment. Embracing the moment is not a bad thing. You can still keep it real by embracing. But I mean, when I was playing, I would go home, right, after practice.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I work at Circuit City. I would go home after practice, play the video games all day. I mean, hours. And people talk about the kids now play video games. I'll be on my video game playing Live 99 for 5-6 hours. You know what I'm saying? And after a while, I was like, okay, what's next? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's next? And it's like, that was the thing that, then you're going out. And then when you go out, it's like, oh, wow, you this person, oh, you this person, oh, yeah. Then that starts to actually get to you. Then you start to play the game less, going out more. That's just my personal experience. So the Circuit City job was just something to stay stable in at that time. You know what I mean?
And you were a rookie, so they didn't peak game right away.
I was a rookie too. I was a rookie.
You could pull that off.
Yeah, nobody. I made a sale. I sold some DVDs. I think I sold like a mouse, like keep a mouse for a laptop.
People don't even use those no more. Like
Yeah.
but it's built into the joint.
Yeah. So, what you got now these days? What you working on?
So my podcast, Scoop B Radio. We've had you on. We had a bunch of people. We actually had Damon Dash on yesterday.
I need that. I love it.
Yes, he had Damon on, and you know, I just left my job. I announced it March 1st, but left my job. Huh?
What job you left?
I was a senior writer at Heavy.com, and I left. I was there for 2.5 years, and basically, I've been focusing on my podcast full time, my brand. I do a show every Thursday with porn star Lisa, with retired porn star Lisa Ann on Thursdays on Instagram Live. I do it through Bovada, and really focusing on my brand and monetizing my brand and doing what I'm doing. So my podcast does well because it's all about relationships. And so when you have those relationships and you connect with brands and sponsors, like, you know, it's a blessing. And so, I left my job after being there 2.5 years, and I'm focusing just on me and my brand and what I got going on.
Well, what was like the highest position you had, like in sports, or the best opportunities you had? Like
So I started at 12. I had a radio show with the Nets when I was a kid, when they were in New Jersey. So this was like 97 to like 99. This was when Calipari was the coach. Jason Williams was on that team. Kendall Gill, Sam Cassell. So I started young. I did a show called Net Slam and Planet, and I actually hosted it with Albert King. And it was on New York radio. It was 6:20 a.m., which used to be a sports station. And they featured the show on NBA Inside Stuff. That was back when the Mob was on. So I did that for 2 years. That kind of gave me my start. And after that, probably two things. One, I was at CBS Radio for a year. I had a podcast. We would go viral for stuff all the time. So I transitioned from radio as my foundation to podcasting and writing. In between, doing CBS, I was at The Source magazine for like a year and some change. So a lot of stuff that I was doing was at publications, making stuff happen. And Heavy was a pretty good look just because they get tons of traffic daily. A lot of people say, yo, when you gonna go to ESPN? When you gonna go to TNT?
Yeah.
It's gotta be the right fit. So
I mean, it feels like you've been I didn't even realize I was older than you because I started hearing your name when I was, I guess, in high school. Yeah, I thought you were getting in high school, so it was like, and it was like towards I would say junior year. So that's 95. Does that sound about right? That sound about right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, the thing is, the foundation of basketball for me started grassroots, New York City, because my uncle Billy, I was saying in the chat last night, Billy Rose was the commissioner for Citywide. So it was like him, Leroy Hendricks, and Mr. Lords. My uncle died in '98. Mr. Lords did the eulogy for my uncle's funeral.
Oh, wow.
And so I used to go to Citywide with my uncle when I had days off for school over at Riverside Church in Riverbank State Park. So for me, I was always around the game. Him and my uncle was, he mentored Ross Strickland. He was cool with Kenny Smith, all them guys. So for me, I was always around the game from that regard. And then also, the other entry point for me was my family ran a sneaker store in Harlem. So we owned the Athlete's Foot. We were the only black-owned Athlete's Foot in New York State. So when I was a kid, my mom would bring me when Hakeem Olajuwon would do sneaker releases, Spud Webb, all that. So I was always around the game, but how you transition that into working in it organically happened just from my interest in basketball.
Right. I see what you're saying. Because I felt like when I first heard your name, when you were in high school, when somebody writing about you as a 15-year-old kid, you just think that person is working for a publication and that person is in the game. You're not thinking about it. I guess it's somebody starting up.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I thought you was doing. I'm like, damn, you must be working with the NBA. You must be doing college. You must be doing everything. I ain't realize.
Scoops. There's Scoop Jackson, and then there's Brandon Scoop B. Robinson.
Right. I know. Yeah.
Scoop, and it's funny because I actually had Scoop Jackson on my podcast last fall. About it, we talked about how he got the nickname Scoop. Scoop is actually on his birth certificate.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was named after a legendary reporter who had the name Scoop, and he went through the whole logistics of that. But I think branding is so important. When I watched you, when you rebranded your name, when you wasn't Ron Artie, you was the artist formerly known as Ron. You became Metta World Peace. That was branding, and I feel like I watched the greats. I watched you. I watched The Rock. I watched Jay-Z. I watched Puff. Branding and owning your own brand and just how you go about doing it. I feel like me personally, I feel like you as the NBA player, that's the fastest way to make money and then take that money and reinvest it into yourself and do other things. The only other way that I've seen people do that in a quick amount of money, a quick amount of time, is selling drugs.
Yeah.
Where you make that fast money, but it's don't buy sneakers and wings and fried rice, take that money and invest it into something else, and then cash out if that's what you do. And I feel like a lot of y'all do that. Like, you take the exposure on the court, and then you flip it into other businesses, like you're doing with XVSX. I think is dope.
I see doing that now. I've been inspired really by a lot of the young players because I came in the league in '99. So '99, honestly, I was just focused on ball. I did try to do a shoe company. I did want to do other things, but I didn't go to college like for a business or anything like that, right? So I was just playing ball and learning along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But then you hear stories like Magic. In '99, you started to hear what Magic was doing,
Right
at that time. So he was just kind of retired. And then you see Shaq. Then you start to hear what Shaq was doing while he was playing. Then you heard the stories of what's my boy name? Herschel Walker was doing some really cool things. Then you heard Vinny Johnson, microwave. And now there's a wave of athletes.
Because you think about it, right? So the league almost went bankrupt before Magic and Bird came along.
Right.
They saved the league in '79.
Yeah.
And what happened to me, Michael and David Stern were the gold emblem or the standard. I feel like when Michael came, you had never seen anything like that. Like, you look back in time, you think of like when you look at politics, right? And you look at Obama and what he did, whether you voted for him or you like him or dislike him, I feel like when you look at Obama and when you look at Trump, they rebranded the way that you looked at the political party, good, bad, or indifferent. They are a brand of within that infrastructure. When I look at Michael, I feel like Michael was a brand within the NBA, and everybody wanted to be like him. It went from commercial, the way he put socks on, the way he put his shorts on, and when he wore those tights under his basketball shorts, like, he was a brand. Right. And I feel like y'all, I feel like he took a Michael Jackson approach.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, everybody wanted to be like Mike. You go to the NBA, get with Nike, get a deal. Just like Mike.
But the business side of it, I feel like Magic and Isaiah were like the gangsters. Like, they moved like the team owners.
Nah, they definitely, I mean, I did hear things about Isaiah, and you actually saw what Isaiah was doing.
Yeah.
Then he owned like the ABA team at first.
Mm-hmm.
Then he was the owner of the Toronto Raptors maybe also?
Yes, and was the general manager.
And the general manager of the Raptors. Isaiah be moving different, definitely. Yeah.
Well, part of it is, I had him on my pod. Part of it is, he hung around Bill Davidson. The former owner of the Pistons. Bill Davidson let him sit in on meetings. So when you learn the King's language and you learn how they move, it's like that line with Jay-Z, Ace of Israel, show him how to move in a room full of vultures, industry shady, you need to take it over. Like, he learned how to move.
Yeah. No,
that's
very true. A lot of people don't get that experience. I don't care how big you are. But then you also got to be willing to humble yourself and walk into the rooms. You know what I'm saying? Because you could, and you got to want to be in those rooms. You know what I mean? You got to want to be in those rooms. You see, Isaiah just became one of the biggest cannabis owners of something. And then Shaq just became part of a digital or advertising agency.
So Isaiah and his son sent me the samples for it's a CBD line. When I be making my smoothies in the morning, it's like these little drops that I put in, and it's actually CBG. There's a difference between CBD and CBG, and it's like a chocolate chip mint flavor. So it tastes like a York peppermint patty, and I put a little drop in my smoothie while I'm making it. Like using your face to do other things. And I feel like Shaq mastered it, Magic mastered it.
Yeah.
But it still goes back to the basic fundamentals of like, everybody thinks you gotta have 1 billion followers on social media. It still goes back to the basic concept of shaking hands and kissing babies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when you did that interview with Craig Sagan, you told him to say Queensbridge. Like the hood felt that, but corporate people noticed it.
Yeah. I can't believe he said that shit. That was crazy. I was just playing around. He said Queensbridge. I'm like, God damn, Craig. R.I.P. to Craig, man.
But I feel like we as people of color have always been the trendsetters. But I think for a long time, we allow people to monetize off of us rather than monetizing ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, to this day, people who didn't live in the inner city are fascinated by The Wire.
By the way,
huh? You remember the show, the series, The Wire on HBO?
The Wire, yeah.
Drugs. People are fascinated with that because it's a world that they don't know.
Yeah. The Wire, actually, The Wire, I never watched The Wire, to tell you the truth. I watched maybe one episode, and I watched it like years later because I'm like, oh, I know what this is. I know the host. I never watched it.
Most people don't know that world. People are fascinated with. That's why we watch The Terminator. That's why we watch. That's why we play video games, because it taps you into a world that you imagine that you don't know.
That's true, and that's probably why people watch The Wire the same way we watch video games. I remember when I first made it, I'm like, yeah, now I can have salad. I was always fascinated with salad, like salad at dinner every night. I'm like, yeah, I can have salad now.
Yeah.
I was always intrigued by that because it was just like, you watch TV, you watch movies, and you'll watch dinner at a table, and you'll see meat, salad, green tomatoes. I was always like, as a kid, just like intrigued by that.